Florida Panthers are a pumpkin. They were a carriage during the 2022 playoffs when they made an incredible run all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals on the back of Sergei Bobrovsky playing out of his mind, and some clutch play from guys like Alexander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk. And that success has a lot of Florida Panthers fans excited at the prospect of another deep run and maybe being able to finish the job this time. But I am not one of them. Florida Panthers is where I hate your stupid fucking team.
I never heard of half of these guys. The ones I do know are way past their prime.
Most of these guys never had a prime.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off then.
The Panthers have one of the best first lines in hockey with Carter Verhaeghe and Matthew Tkachuk centered by Alexander Barkov. Tkachuk in particular has broken out as a member of the Panthers last year after being traded from Calgary, putting up over 100 points. On the second line, it's a lot more youth with Eetu Loserinen between Matti Samoskevich and the veteran experience of Evan Rodriguez. Sam Reinhart, who also had an incredible breakout year in 2022, will anchor a third line with Nick Cousins and Anton Lundell, while Ryan Lomberg, Steven Lorentz, and Kevin Stunlin will get their time in the fourth line. Overall, it's a lot of question marks for Florida compared to the roster that went into the playoffs last year. Especially in the top six outside of those big three for Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Tkachuk, they don't really have a lot of firepower unless those young kids develop. On the back line, they have Gustav Forling and Josh Mohr, very young and very promising defensemen, but behind them, ooh boy is it rough. You've got Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who is at this point in his career basically a Ferrari running off a golf cart engine, and Dmitry Kulikov back to the swamp once again. Niko Mikkola was thoroughly unimpressive last year, and Mike Riley is a career depth defenseman. Of course, the big issue is that this team is missing their two best defensemen, Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour, who are currently on the IR. GM Bill Zito has expressed that he's optimistic they can both be back by the end of October or early November, but there hasn't been a really significant update on either of the two of them in a month or so it's really unclear when they're going to actually be getting back into game shape and how long it might take for them to get back into the form that they were in at the end of last year when the Panthers were peaking. In goal, Bobrovsky is back on the case. Sergei Bobrovsky is coming back after an incredible playoff run that followed a otherwise mediocre regular season. Bobble would be backed up by Anthony Stolarz, a perfectly serviceable backup, but in all honesty, the Panthers are hoping that lightning strikes twice when it comes to Bobrovsky because he has been kind of mid to putrid in the years before the Panthers went to the playoffs last year. And with the Cats defense so banged up to start the season, it's entirely possible we could see a hard regression to the mean.
Anybody got an idea?
Paul Maurice entering his second year as head coach of the Panthers and almost his 30th year behind the bench on an NHL team. In my opinion, Paul Maurice is a pretty overrated coach. He makes the playoffs almost as much as he misses them, and he is good for one or two surprise runs deep into the playoff, but he's never been a coach to get consistently high-level results. Pictured here having smelled a fart, Maurice is in all likelihood safe in Florida for at least a couple of years off the back of that cup run, but it's only a matter of time before the Florida Indians figure out that he is a fraud.
Who the hell are you?
I'm the new guy.
Because of the aforementioned injuries to Ekblad and Montour, the Florida Panthers, who were tight up against the cap, had to spend some money and find some guys who could replace them for the first bit of the season. They spent that money on Dmitry Kulikov and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, two guys who have been, well, liabilities is a bit of a strong word. That's absolutely appropriate for both of them. They were both two of the worst defensive defensemen in hockey last year and have not been very good for the last few years. But when you're spending just over $3 million on two defensemen to replace Aaron Ekblad and Brad Montour, well, you get what you pay for. And at the top of the lineup, they needed to replace the losses of Sam Bennett and Anthony Duclair, so they added Evan Rodriguez. Really? You got Evan Rodriguez to be on the first or second line? Like, he's fine as a bottom six forward, don't get me wrong. He could be a middle six guy in a pinch. But to have him playing potentially first line minutes, I can't say that that's the smartest move there, Florida.
You gay Irish fireman, you're okay. But you, I do not like.
Tkachuk is ascending to superstardom, and that is great for hockey, especially that he's doing it in an underrepresented market like Florida. The dude is a legitimate superstar, and I really hope that Florida continues to be able to unlock him the way they did last year, and especially in the playoffs, because that dude was clutch as Everybody seems to forget that the Florida Panthers almost didn't make the playoffs at all last year, and they were almost bounced out in the first round last year if Boston hadn't choked epically. They entered this year banged up on defense with worse forward depth and a worse goaltending situation because Stolarz is not nearly as good as Alex Lyon. You're not going to have your two best defensemen for God knows how long, your top six is shaky at best, and you want to tell me that this team is making no deep run again? It's more likely, to me, that the Florida Panthers missed the playoffs this year, just 1 year removed from making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Sorry, Florida fans, the pumpkin's about to rot. Better make a pie.